Video from my 2015 trip to Roatan, Honduras with Power Scuba. Roatan, Honduras is a part of the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef. The Mesoamerican Barrier Reef is the second largest barrier reef in the world, second only to the Great Barrier Reef, the third being the Florida Keys. This is what my friends describe as aquarium diving. There's lots of coral, there's lots of small fish, but there really weren't too many of the very large fish, the very large grouper, the very large sharks, etc. This was a cleaning station that was found on a brain coral. If you pay real close attention to this little grouper, you can see that there are tiny wrasse and gobies that are swimming around him and picking at his parasites. This is one of the neatest examples of mutualism that I've seen in the animal kingdom. This is another cleaning station, this time on a shipwreck. This is a midnight parrotfish that's being cleaned. This one's so large that it actually has a remora. There was quite a variety of animals on this trip. This is a great barracuda. I saw several during my time, including on the wrecks. This is a Caribbean reef squid. We thought it was a cuttlefish, but I believe it's a reef squid. This is an oceanic triggerfish. To me, they look like small mola mola. We saw them at about 100 feet. This is a black Durgan triggerfish. I love the scrawled patterns on his forehead. They were everywhere. This is a saucer-eye porgy. It was one of the larger fish on the reef. They too were fairly common. This was a free-swimming remora. It was a huge remora, over a foot long. I was looking around trying to find the shark. This is a trumpetfish. Trumpetfish are ambush predators. They hide in the coral and wait for small fish to pass by when they suck them in with their very small mouth. This is a smooth trunkfish. JP was talking about how he saw a baby or a juvenile smooth trunkfish at one point in his diving career and was super excited about it. Here you can see the trunkfish feeding on the coral. They take little pecks. Here we found a juvenile trunkfish. JP was ecstatic, doing a little happy dance underwater. We were so fortunate to find this. This is only the second one he's ever seen in his diving career. Here was his response to his discovery. I think this is the happiest I've ever seen him. This is a spotted trunkfish. The trunkfish actually secrete a toxic mucus on their skin. This is a small blowfish. I had a very interesting experience with one on a night dive where it was basically headbutting me in its pursuit of krill. It then ballooned up and floated away. This is a much larger cousin, a porcupine fish. You can see its method of locomotion is quite different. I was very excited to see this one. This is a black grouper. I'm not quite sure what this little tiny grouper was. I saw quite a few, but it was just a few inches long. This is an Asau grouper. In my experience, they were much more common than the black, but didn't get as big. This is a French grunt. They're very common in Florida. This is a little goatfish. They are so named because of the little whiskers on their chin. This is a stoplight parrotfish. It derives its name from the very large scales that resemble the lights on a stoplight. This was a jack that was swimming around on the reef. We actually saw a big school of these at one point. Here's a scorpion fish that was attempting to blend in with the rock, but didn't quite do as well as this one. This guy was basically impossible to see. If it wasn't for the highlight of the flashlight, I wouldn't have even known it was there. This is a four-eyed butterfly fish. These were also fairly common, and one of the more colorful fish on the reef. These are a pair of French angelfish. This was also a little bit deeper, and they were hanging around by a very large barrel sponge. They were quite beautiful. These are blue tangs. They're in the surgeonfish family. You can see the little scalpel that's by their tail fin. They can pop that out and cut a larger fish if necessary for defense. This is what's known as a sand diver. It will do a head plant into the sand and disappear at the sign of danger. Unfortunately, we saw quite a few lionfish. It took me about a week until I finally figured out how to shoot one with the pole spear that the guide lent me. This is a drum. The guides get so excited when they find these. I don't understand why. This is a toadfish. The guide would use shredded lionfish as bait to sort of lure him out. They actually make a croaking sound at night. This was one of many, many green moray eels. I was surprised to see them often free swimming. One almost sat on Andrew's head, one almost attacked JP. I have much more footage, but this was very cool. This is a spotted moray eel. Saw this little one on a night dive. It was a fraction the size of any of the green moray eels that we saw. This is a white spot filefish. It is much larger than its cousin, the scrawled filefish, which we'll see right here. We would happen across quite a few scrawled filefish on night dives. They were a pleasure to see. They're actually related to the trunkfish and triggerfish. This was a spotted lobster. The lobster in the Caribbean are much different than California lobster. This is actually called a common octopus. It was iridescent green and absolutely gorgeous. We followed several on the various night dives just to watch them try to blend in with their environment. This is a much larger common octopus that we spent quite a bit of time with. They are absolutely beautiful and so incredibly intelligent and animated. They're always a pleasure to see. This night dive was so much fun that the dive guide had originally specified a 50-minute dive time. But after spotting this guy, we stayed with him for 5+ minutes and extended our dive time to a full hour. This is a white spot octopus. As you can see, it's markedly different than the common octopus. It was of a fairly large size. This was the only white spot octopus that I saw on the trip. The vast majority were the, I guess appropriately named, common octopus. All of them are beautiful. This is a banded coral shrimp. I love the whiskers that sort of radiate out from its head. This was the best shot that I had of one. This was a giant crab. I'm not sure what its proper name is, but we saw several. I thought this was a really cool shot because you can actually see it feeding on the coral. This was a very interesting worm that I saw on the same night dive. I'm not sure the species. We had looked it up, but I lost the information. This is a fireworm. It has bristles all along its body, and if you touch any of them, they're extremely irritating and extremely painful. You want to give them quite a bit of clearance. I happen to see this one hanging off the bottom of a rock. This was a hermit crab living in a conch shell. I saw a couple of them on the dive. I think his house might be a little big. I guess he's got room to grow. This is a slipper or Spanish lobster. It's actually the molted shell that JP had found. It's really different looking than a normal spiny or Caribbean lobster. This is what's called a flamingo tongue. What you see that's spotted there is actually tissue that surrounded the shell. One of the really neat things about diving in Roatan was the structure of the coral. It's an old reef, and the coral heads form these deep rifts and valleys that are oftentimes just wide enough for one diver to get through. They make for really picturesque vistas. Sometimes they actually form caves or caverns, and you'll have little openings that allow small shafts of light to penetrate down. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Some of these caves or caverns are quite large and extend quite a ways back. They can be 100 feet deep, maybe more. They can be 30 feet tall. Getting an opportunity to explore these caves was really rewarding, and made up for the fact that the coral in our particular location, which was about the middle of the north side of the island, wasn't as robust as it was in the west end of the island. Here's Andrew on film, proof that he's actually on the trip, as he took some amazing photos. These little silver fish that look like little hatchet fish were common in the coral caves. Here's a video of some of the coral and sponges that you find. This is a up-close video of one of the large barrel sponges. They make great foreground subjects for pictures. This is a branching vase sponge. They were almost iridescent. This is elkhorn coral. You'll see in a moment an up-close view. This is the dreaded fire coral. If some of this scratches you, you're in for a world of hurt. This is what's known as lettuce leaf coral. This is particularly beautiful in large clusters. It's somewhat translucent. These were small polyps that I thought were pretty cool. I don't know what the species is. This was a small green mushroom. When viewed under a fluorescent light, it actually glows. The wrecks in Honduras were amazing. Possibly the best part. This is the El Aguila. This particular ship is 230 feet long and sits in approximately 110 feet of water. It was split up in a storm a couple of years ago, and there are still some swim-throughs that you can do. Here we're at the stern of the ship. Behind the ship is a field of garden eels. Here's the inside of the stern. We went in, hooked a left, looped around, and then went back out. It's a light-to-light swim-through. You can see an opening up there on the top of the screen, and there was an opening that we entered in and a separate one that we went through, so it was safe. We made sure to keep a close distance. Here are the garden eels. I was so excited to see these things. They're beautiful. There was quite a large field. What's kind of funny about these is that as you approach them, they retreat back into their hole. So you can't get a really up-close shot of any of them. As you can see, it's 106 feet of water. This is the central portion of the wreck. It's long since collapsed. Only the bow and stern remain erect. Here you can see the bow off in the distance. On the bow, some of the local dive guides would cut up lionfish and would feed them to the resident black groupers in the area. There's a very large reef just above the bow that is home to a great variety of fish. Here you can see the black grouper swimming with some of the divers. They were very friendly. Here's the reef that's just above the bow of the ship. What's really neat about this reef is that it's closer to the west end and much, much more full of life. It also makes the dive much better because you can finish in about 15 feet of water. This is the second wreck that we dove. This is the Odyssey. This is a 300-foot long cargo ship. It too is broken up. Here the stern has quite a few swim-throughs. You can see it's a more traditional style cargo ship. It too has a field of garden eels behind it. This is more like 116 feet of water. Here's the light-to-light swim-through that JP and I did. It's really neat to see the life that's growing on these ships and how they act as a refuge for so many animals. That midnight parrotfish from earlier in the video was actually on this wreck. Here's the center portion of the wreck. As you can see, it's collapsed, but there used to be large cargo storage right in the middle of the ship. This is the bow of the ship. It's listing to its side, but there are still compartments that you can swim in and explore. Here's the inside of one of those compartments. Unfortunately, I spotted more lionfish here, but this was the first one that I was actually able to get. I went back to the dive guide, grabbed his pole spear, came back and shot him. And then we fed the lionfish to the black grouper. This is the safety stop. All in all, it was a fantastic trip. I'm really fortunate to have gone with some wonderful friends, and I couldn't have asked for a better time. I look forward to returning one day in the future.